He was not simply a giant. He was Israel's worst nightmare, over 9 feet tall. His coat of armor was so heavy, it weighed as much as a grown man. And in his hand was a spear, tipped with 15 pounds of iron. It was so heavy most men couldn't lift it, let alone swing it as a weapon. A shield bearer walked before him because even carrying his gear was a two-man job. Every step he took made the ground tremble. For 40 days, Goliath stood before the armies of Israel. Every morning, every evening, he challenged them to send out a warrior to face him, but no one dared. Not one soldier stepped forward, until a shepherd boy arrived. His name was David. No armor, no sword, no battle experience, just a sling, a few stones, and the courage to stand before the most feared warrior on the battlefield. Goliath looked him over and laughed. He insulted him, called him a dog. Then he promised to feed David's flesh to the birds. And then he charged. The ground shook beneath his feet. His spear was raised, but David didn't run. He stood his ground. And in that moment, one question remained. How could a shepherd boy possibly defeat a giant? This is the story of David and Goliath. The Valley of Elah stretched between two hills. On one side stood the army of Israel. On the other, the Philistines. Thousands of men had gathered for war. Shields, spears, armor covering the hillsides. Banners moved in the wind. Fires burned among the tents. Everything about the scene suggested that a battle was about to begin, but the battle never came. For days, the two armies held their positions. The valley between them remained empty, still, silent, waiting. Every morning, the soldiers woke knowing the enemy was only a short distance away. They could see them, they could hear them, and they knew that at any moment, one side could descend into the valley and the fighting would begin, but neither side moved. Waiting became its own kind of warfare. A soldier could endure a battle once it came, but waiting for one gave a man too much time to think, too much time to look across the valley and wonder if the man beside him would still be alive by sunset. So they waited. The sun rose, crossed the sky, disappeared. Morning came again, and still nothing moved. Then, one morning, something changed in the Philistine ranks. The soldiers began to part. A figure stepped forward, unlike the men around him, enormous. The farther he walked from the camp, the more obvious his size became. An armor-bearer walked ahead of him, carrying his shield. The giant carried his weapons himself. He descended into the valley, stopped, and looked up at the army of Israel. Then he called out, his voice carried across the hills, and the long silence was broken. His name was Goliath, champion of the Philistines. And he had not come to fight an army, he had come to challenge one man.
Choose a man, and let him come to me!
The terms were simple, one champion against another. If Israel's man won, the Philistines would serve Israel. If Goliath won, Israel would serve the Philistines.
Send me a man!
Then he waited. No one moved. Goliath looked from soldier to soldier and found exactly what he expected: fear. He turned, walked back to his camp, and returned the next morning, and the morning after that. Again and again.
Send me a man!
The same challenge, until the sound of his voice became something Israel simply lived with. Morning, evening, and it worked. The Israelites were armed, they were trained, they were backed by an entire army. None of it mattered when they imagined standing alone in that valley. As long as nobody volunteered, nobody had to face him. So the distance itself began to feel like safety. Fear becomes powerful when it becomes normal. And somewhere among the silent ranks stood King Saul, Israel's king, with no champion and no answer. Far away in Bethlehem, a young shepherd knew nothing of any of this. Not the valley, not the giant, not yet. His name was David. David's life was far from any battlefield. While his older brothers served in Saul's army, David stayed behind with the sheep. His world was hills, open fields, and the long silence that comes with tending a flock alone. But being alone didn't mean being unaware. A shepherd has to watch, a sheep wandering too far. The flock depended on him, and when danger came, he couldn't simply walk away. There had been a lion once, a bear another time. David had gone after both, not because he wasn't afraid, but because the sheep mattered more than his fear. Day after day, the same hills, the same watching, until one day his father Jesse called him.
David, take this bread to your brothers.
David's brothers were at the battlefield. Jesse had food prepared for them. He wanted David to carry it and bring back news. David accepted. He gathered the provisions and left Bethlehem. There was nothing remarkable about the errand. He wasn't being sent to fight. He wasn't looking for glory. He was a shepherd, carrying food to his brothers. Behind him was his father's house. Ahead of him, a valley he'd never seen and a name he had never heard. David reached the Israelite camp and found an army that didn't move like one. Men shifted among the tents. Weapons were close at hand, but there was no charge, no advance, just tension. Then he heard it, a voice powerful, coming from the valley. David looked, and there was Goliath. The armor, the size, the weapons. But what caught David's attention even more was the men around him. The way they stepped back when the giant moved, the way they listened, but never answered. David began asking questions. Who is this man? That is Goliath, and no one will fight him? No one.
Hi, it takes a lot of hours to create this. If you can please like and subscribe, we'd also like to know where you're watching from in the comments. Thank you.
David asked what reward waited for the man who defeated the giant. But the reward wasn't really his concern. What troubled him was simpler. A man was standing in the valley, challenging Israel, and an entire army was letting him. His questions drew attention, and then his brothers. One of them turned on him. "Why are you here?" He accused David of arrogance, of abandoning the sheep, of coming only to watch a battle, but David didn't back down. He had seen what everyone else had seen. He just couldn't understand why they had accepted it. Goliath was dangerous, but he was still a man, and word of the shepherd questioning the whole camp eventually reached Saul. David stood before the king. Saul looked at him and didn't see a warrior. He saw a boy. "You are only a boy." David didn't argue his age. Instead, he talked about what he knew, the lion that came for the flock, and how he didn't run. He went after it, but David didn't credit his own strength. He said, "The Lord who delivered me from the lion and the bear will deliver me from this Philistine." Saul listened. David stood there with the same certainty he'd carried through the camp. Then something in Saul shifted. He wasn't looking at a boy anymore. He was looking at conviction. Saul relented. David would face Goliath, but first, Saul wanted to give him an advantage. If David was going into battle, he would need armor. Saul's armor was brought out. A helmet, a breastplate, a sword, everything a warrior would need. David put it on. He took a step, then another. Something was wrong. He couldn't move the way he needed to. The weight was unfamiliar. The sword didn't belong in his hand. The armor meant to protect him, but it was only making him slower, heavier, less himself. So David took it off. Instead, he took his shepherd's staff, his sling. He walked to the brook, knelt to the water, and chose 5 smooth stones, one at a time. He placed each stone into his bag, a staff, a sling, 5 stones. That was what David carried toward the battlefield. Nothing that looked like a soldier, nothing that looked like the champion Israel needed, just what he was. The army watched him go, step by step, into the valley, and the giant was waiting on the other side. Goliath saw him and looked confused. He glanced toward the Israelite line, then back at David. Was this the man they had sent? He looked at the staff, the sling, the young face, then he laughed. The sound rolled across the valley. He had expected a warrior.
He is just a boy.
He mocked David's age, his appearance.
You send me a dog?
The laughter disappeared, his voice turned to threat. He cursed David and promised that his body would be left for the birds. The soldiers on the hillside had heard threats like this before. They knew what Goliath's presence did to men, but David didn't retreat. He didn't lower his head. Goliath wanted to make him feel small. But David wasn't measuring himself against Goliath. He was measuring Goliath against God. The giant raised his weapons and began to move. David answered him.
You come at me with a spear and a sword. I come at you with the name of the Lord!
Goliath's footsteps grew heavier. The ground seemed to shake with each one. He reached into his bag, closed his hand around a stone, set it in the sling. David ran. David released the stone. It crossed the valley and struck him in the forehead. His armor struck the ground with a sound that seemed to echo far beyond the valley. Then nothing. No one moved. The Israelites stared. The Philistine stared. David walked to him and took his sword. The champion who had stood before Israel for 40 days was lying in the dust. The Philistines saw their champion dead in the valley, and their confidence collapsed with him. The man they had trusted to break Israel's will was gone. They began to retreat. Then they ran. The Israelites saw it happen, and something inside them broke loose. They surged down the hillside, thousands of men charging where none of them had dared to walk alone. The valley that had stayed silent for so long erupted into motion. Israel pursued the Philistines far beyond it. David had walked into that valley alone, but he didn't leave it that way. Eventually, the battlefield grew quiet, the soldiers returned, and David remained among them, no longer the shepherd who had arrived carrying food, but a name every man in the camp now knew. Saul took notice, and word of what happened in the valley began to travel with David's name throughout Israel. The shepherd who had walked out to bring his brothers bread had become the reason an army found its courage.